Voorhees. I'm with Peak Performance Consulting Group. Over my 30-plus year career, I spent the entire time helping companies, principally banks, improve their distribution systems, optimize their distributions, and transform their distribution systems. So today I'd like to talk about opening new branches. Now that may seem odd in today's environment where everyone's talking about closing branches. In fact, you can see my other weblog about closing branches. Today I'm going to talk about the reverse side, which is opening branches, infilling your network, expanding your network. And while there's been some 7,000 branch closures over the last 5 years in the U.S., banks are still continuing to build new branches. In fact, the bank that I was at, we closed over 1,000 branches in the last 4.5 years, but we continue to open branches or places where it makes sense. So let's talk about things that I've learned over my career about opening new branches. First off, location, location, location. Everyone knows the real estate rules. It really is important. You want to be in highly trafficked retail areas, and you want to have locations that are stand out, that are easy to see from your customers. So it starts by the most important, hard corner locations, standalone buildings. Those are the ones that tend to do the best performance. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If you're on a hard corner, you're going to get visibility from 2 different street directions. So no matter which way customers come by, they're going to be able to see your location. You can opt to go less expensive and go to an inline location. They tend not to generate as much sales, and you tend not to get as big of a branch, but you may save enough money to make it worthwhile. And then at the end of the lowest end of the spectrum is to do in-store branches, supermarket branches, as many people call them. Personally, I don't like supermarket branches, and I'll tell you a little bit about those later, but basically it's because you get about half the performance for 2/3 the cost. Keep in mind, location, location, location. Second thing is don't shortchange yourself on marketing. Many banks I've talked to over the years just stun me whenever I think about it, and I always play back to them. Why would you invest $2 to $3 million in capital to build a branch, staff it with people, spend $900,000 or $1 million a year to operate it, and not spend any money marketing it? Spend some money marketing it to help prime the pump and get customers to use it. You've got this big expense sitting there. Spend a little bit more to make sure it's effective in delivering on the goals that you set. Third is really think about ways to bridge to customers you already have. Now, when you build a new branch, you can either infill in an existing market where you already have distribution, or you can break into a new market. Well, building in a market you already have distribution in, you already have pre-existing customers there. You might want to add distribution to the edge of that market or a gap within that market, and that is generally going to give you better performance. And the reason is, in general, about half of your sales are going to come from your existing customer base. If you go to a brand new market, you don't have an existing customer base. And while that may be great for long-term customer acquisition, in the short term, it's probably going to hurt your payback on that branch. It'll take it longer for it to pay back the investment of it. So both are good. You just have to have different expectations to go forward. Fourth point is, and this is really critical, is make sure that you staff up. Make sure that you put enough salespeople in the centers to generate the kind of sales volume. And while that may mean during slow times they need to do outbound calling, but you want to make sure that you got sales capacity to be able to drive enough customer base growth to make sure that you get your payback sooner than later. Five, consider whether an ATM, a standalone ATM, will replace the branch. One of the things people have all known about hub and spoke concept, right? Where you have a big hub and then you have smaller branches as your spokes. Some of the spokes may simply be a full function deposit taking ATM, whether in a storefront or a kiosk and the like. Generally, they can perform about 90% of the transactional activities that go on at a branch, but they do it at about 5% of the capital costs and 10% of the operating expense. So if you can take care of a bulk of your customers' basic needs in a much lower cost alternative way, Why wouldn't you pair that with a branch? What I found in my research is that remote ATM sites that are located in really good locations that are deposit taking, not just cash dispensers, stretch a branch's trade area. Therefore, you've created more convenience for your customers. And on those rare occasions when customers do want to open up accounts, they're willing to travel a little further distance to open up those accounts. Six, be wary of supermarket branches. I mentioned this before. I've closed hundreds and hundreds of supermarket branches. Some people have performed well in them. They've figured out the model of how you do them. But you keep in mind, just like having an ATM inside of a supermarket, it's going to do less volume than one that's located in the parking lot. And that's because they aren't 24-hour access. And so you also have the same customers over and over and over coming into the supermarket. And at some point, they've already had the chance to open up an account there, maybe 10 or 20 times. At some point, they just ignore that it's there, unless they're an existing customer, and then they start using it as a quick and easy transactional point. And that's what I found, in fact. They generate about half of the revenue base that an existing branch would generate, and they do it at about 2/3 the cost. And the reason it costs more, even though they're relatively small, is because instead of staffing the branch at maybe 40 hours, you're staffing the branch at 70 hours. And so you've got a heavily expensed branch tied to staffing, and they're not generating the kind of quality accounts. They may be profitable, but they're not going to be as profitable as a well-done traditional branch. Seventh point is making sure that you go big on signage. Make sure that people know how to find your facility. I can't tell you how often I see a beautiful facility and it's got really tiny signage. Now, sometimes that's driven by landlord rules and municipal rules, but make sure you maximize the signage you get. And then don't plant trees underneath the signs, such that in 5 years when the trees grow, they block the signage. Happens all the time. Make sure you really think through all the implications of your landscaping and all the other things associated with it. Focus on both new customers as well as your existing customers. As I mentioned before, about half your sales are going to come from your existing customers. So you want to make sure it's not just for existing customers. You want to make sure that you're doing acquisition as well. It's a balancing act. I once had a vice chairman of the bank ask me, well, do we focus on acquisition or do we focus on cross-sell? And I looked him straight in the eye and I said, why is it a choice? Why can't we do both? And he laughed, and once he understood the economics of doing both, it made total sense to him, and we went back to a more balanced approach. Nine, add drive-up lanes. Just don't add drive-up tellers. Make sure that your customers have the opportunity to bank or transact either while in their car or on foot. One of the things I found is that many customers prefer, especially in certain markets, prefer not to get out of their cars, whether it's a parent with children in the car, or you're an elderly person, or you're someone who has some physical challenges of getting into the branch. Give them options such that they don't need to get out of the car to be able to do that. Again, it's all about giving them options. And 10, make sure you get your staff on board early. You really want to make sure that they get in to understand the market. They can go and start working with businesses that are local and like to pre-sell the market. You want to make sure that when the day you open, they've got sort of a pipeline build of activity that'll prime the pump for the branch to be successful. So again, sort of 10 simple things, pretty straightforward, but you make sure that you consider all of them when you're making this multi-million-dollar investment, and generally a commitment for 20 years or longer if you're leasing the space. This is Jon Voorhees. Thanks for listening.